Good. And I can then start with the introduction to the course. And I think I need to start from the tutorials, supporting documents, where you can find it. Now, I am now opening virtuale.unibo.it and I'm sharing my screen. Now, let me share my screen, and here it is. Okay, now I think you can see Virtuale. Just 1 second, I want to open a second connection on my phone because I want to check what you see. So, let me see. Okay, here it is. Perfect. Okay, I want to make sure that I can check what you see because, okay, perfect. So you see my screen now, which is on Virtuale. And of course, this is the way I see it. And it's not the way you see it. So let me just go in Virtuale in my courses. You also have a page with your courses, and in Virtuale you can see Harbour Engineering. Where is it? Just 1 second. Here it is. So if we click on Harbour Engineering, you see that there are pages with the tutorials, starting with the introduction. Here you can see also some announcements, and I may use, there is nothing there yet, I may use this announcement to quickly reach you, because when I write on the announcement, you will get an email with the announcement. So for any communication, I may use the chat in Teams, but also the announcements here. Now, if you see under introduction, after the announcement, you see a page called Guidelines for a Successful Learning and Exam. I think these are useful guidelines, and because, you know, it's information regarding how the course is taught, how the exam is organized. If we click here, now we see that a second page is open with the link, open the web page on the teacher's website. If you click there, you go on my website. Now, let me now move to my website. So I got to my website from Virtuale, but of course you can get to my website directly. And my web address is www.albertomontanari.it. This is my website. So my tutorial documents are stored in my website. Why this? Because I want all the tutorials of my teaching activities to be available open access. Virtuale is not open access. Virtuale, it's closed access. It's open only to students of the University of Bologna. So what is the problem? The problem is that once you are not a student anymore, you don't have access to the information anymore. And therefore, and also there are the other problems related to the closed access, which means that, for instance, you cannot reuse the material, etc. I made an effort to make everything open access, which means that hopefully it will remain available for you even in the future. It's material that is continuously developing. I am making changes every month, which means that hopefully you will have forever, not forever, because everything has an end, of course, but you hopefully will have for some time updated information available related to the courses that you took with me. And this is my real ambition, because I think that open access information is essential in order to provide a long-lasting and up-to-date information. Moreover, everything on my website is open access, so you may reuse it, you can do whatever it's useful for you. Of course, you don't have to use what you find on my website in the cut and paste mode for producing original works by you. Let me make an example. If you cut and paste from the web, even if open access web, and you paste in your degree thesis, this is an illegal activity, because anything that is produced by you must be your creation, and therefore you cannot simply cut and paste. Just be aware of that. But for instance, you can, if a website is open access, you can reuse the material, which means that you put a quotation, for instance, a quote. If you want to cut and paste a sentence, you quote it, you put it between commas, and you can do that. Or you can reuse a figure, providing the citation to the source of the figure. So when the material is open access, the opportunity to reuse it, it's a great opportunity. Or you can modify and reuse. And you cannot do the same with copyrighted material. Beware of these details, because today is very easy to cut and paste from the web. So you have to beware of what are the allowed activities and what are the illegal activities, because plagiarism is also it's illegal, and it's a kind of illegal activity that it's particularly, you know, it's particularly to avoid. Okay, and so my website, you see, it's divided in 2 columns. Let me expand it a little bit. Teaching and research. Under teaching, you find my tutorials, and in the second box, you see the tutorials of Harbour Engineering. We can click there, and we get to the page where I landed from Virtuale. Let's have a quick read to this page, because it gives all the logistic information that you need to attend my course. Now, let me move to another visualization mode. This is larger. Okay, now you can see on the screen, but I think it is just enough if you listen from me. And you have to be aware of the fact that everything I'm saying is reported here. Okay, so what is the focus of this course? It's Harbour Engineering, the course, and focuses on design of harbors and coast management. Coast management was also part of my previous course on coastal engineering. There is some coast management even here, but here the main focus is harbors, ports, and berths. Okay, so we have 32 hours together, and I will teach for the full set of 32 hours. Maybe that I involve the tutor for one lecture, but I really would like to make an effort to be always present, because I really like the interaction with the students. I think it is productive if we can establish a kind of reciprocal knowledge that allows us to make an effective and rewarding exchange of information. Now, I will try to include about 6 hours dedicated to solving exercises by using the personal computer and by working together with you. And for developing these exercises, I will kindly ask you to use your own PC. Of course, it's relatively easy because we are in streaming, so you have a PC in front of you. It's not like when you attend in physical presence, where you may decide to attend without the PC. My suggestion is, even if we end up attending in physical presence, my suggestion is to always have your PC in front of you so that we can develop these exercises together. And what is the reason why I think it is useful to dedicate time to exercises? It is an obvious reason. I think it is extremely useful to have an idea of what practical applications mean. And in particular, I think it is very useful for you to get familiar with the PC. And you will have in your professional career to make the PC your best friend, meaning that you have to gain the deepest possible knowledge of this guy, the PC, because the more you know of the opportunities that the PC offers to you, the better it is. You will have the necessity to manage different programs. Some of them will be commercial programs, like, for instance, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint. You will have also the need to manage other less known programs. And in your career, it is very likely that you will have the necessity also to write your own programs. So I think you have already some knowledge of programming softwares like MATLAB, for instance. I think it's a very good idea to try to expand your knowledge of these softwares that allow you to make programming. And this is why, indeed, I would like to make some exercises with you by developing programs together with an open access software. Again, open access because it is an opportunity. It is available for free, and also there are other advantages when using open access tools. And the main advantage is the opportunity to share your results and to get support from the web. Okay, so about 6 hours of exercises, and these are not compulsory, and exercises are not asked at the exam. So if you don't attend exercises, it's not a problem at all for your exam, because my questions at the exam don't refer to exercises. I may ask you at the exam, as I will tell you later, to develop a simple exercise, but I will not ask you anything related to the PC exercises that we will develop together. So you may also decide, for this reason, not to attend these exercises. Of course, I suggest you to attend them, because one thing is the exam and one thing is your education. Being prepared for the exam, getting allowed at the exam, doesn't imply that you got an optimal education. These are two different things. The exam is just a tool. It's just a mean for the professor to check your preparation, your education. But the exam is, of course, making a very rapid check. If you want to get an excellent education, I suggest you to try to expand your knowledge as much as possible, even besides what is needed for taking the exam. I hope this is clear, and I strongly advise you to focus on your education rather than passing the exam. If your education is good, you will get allowed at the exam. Vice versa, allowed at the exam doesn't mean that your education is excellent, as I said. And keep in mind that when you are looking for a job, the employers look for excellent background, excellent education. They don't look for how many laudes a student got. Okay, and in teaching, I try to maximize my interaction with you. And here you can see some ways to interact. First of all, I will make the videos of the lectures available online, where you will see later. Later there is the link in this page. Also, I think a very productive experience that I made in the past was to invite the students during the lectures to deliver a short presentation. A short presentation on a topic that, of course, must be related to what we are studying, must be related to Harbour engineering. And the presentation could be, for instance, about a problem that you know where you live, or a solution that was found to a problem, to a technical problem, that you experienced close where you live. So if you directly knew about a problem, it means that you have a privileged information on it, an information that is interesting, an information that I cannot offer to you, to the other students, because, as I said, if you observe it in first person, it means that you are privileged. Or maybe that you expanded your knowledge by studying something related to the lectures, which caught your attention, took your attention. And in this case, it may be interesting that this additional information, this privileged, this developed information is presented. How these presentations work? It's very simple. I give you 8 minutes, and you present to your colleagues 5 slides. You describe the problem, you describe the solution. You have 8 minutes for you only to share your knowledge with the other students. Why this is useful? It is useful because, you know, it is extremely important in your career that you get familiar with giving presentations. You get familiar with explaining what you did to your employer, to your colleagues. It is essential that you become a good communicator. And therefore, I suggest that you take any opportunity to try your communication skills, to test your communication skills. And I think this is a very good opportunity. You have opportunity to have an audience listening to you. The audience is not large, it's 10 people, but it's still, a very qualified audience. So why not? And if you are good in delivering this presentation, I can consider this presentation as a part of your exam, because, as I will tell you later, one essential index of my assessment is the ability to present. I mean, in my evaluation, in my mark out of 30, I consider the ability to present as an important part of this evaluation, of this assessment. And therefore, I suggest that you take this opportunity to test yourself. Now, I will also try to propose to you some self-evaluation tests which may allow you to test your preparation before the exam. Last year I couldn't do it because of the pandemics, emerging pandemics that took all of us by surprise. I hope this year to have time to propose to you some self-evaluation tests. I may also ask you if you can fill an anonymous survey of your opinion on my teaching. It would be very useful for me to correct my direction, my teaching modalities, basing on your anonymous suggestions. Of course, you will ask at the end of the year to compile the usual survey of students' opinion. This is the official survey by the university, but this is compiled at the end of the lectures. It is useful for me to get your feedback before the end of the lecture, so I can correct if needed. And beware that I am very delighted to receive your criticism. So if you have any comment, any observation, you can write on the chat. You can write individually and confidentially to me. I really would like to get your feedback. Even if you are happy, I really like getting a few lines like, Professor, I am happy, or Professor, please speak slower. Professor, please give us more time for the exercises. Whatever you think it is useful for improving our joint experience, I'm really open to your feedback. And don't be afraid, because in no way your criticism would undermine your performances in the final exam. Maybe the opposite is true. If I get some criticism, maybe I get a good feeling of your willingness to support and to cooperate with me. especially under this unusual situation of lecturing in streaming. Okay, we are getting used to it, but still, you know, it's not like teaching in front of the students. I cannot see your eyes. It's a bit difficult for me to realize if you are happy or not. Okay, let me see. Tutorial documents, you see the list here. Please keep in mind that this list may be not final, which means that we may skip some of them. I may add some new. We will see. It depends also on you. And here you see the tutorial web pages for the practical exercises. Again, this is a provisional list. Okay, and now the videos are available at this link here. I am pointing the mouse to it. It's the playlist, the YouTube playlist of Harbour Engineering. If I click on it now, it's empty, of course, because the first video will be uploaded today in the afternoon after the lectures, usually the same day, but it may happen that it takes to me a couple of days to upload them. You will find the videos here. They are unedited, so they are just uploaded as they are recorded. There is no pre-editing, which means that sometimes the video may be not of optimal quality. Actually, if I teach from my office, I think the quality is good. And if I'm teaching in the room, maybe that, you know, I'm not sure, sometimes the blackboard, it's not easy to see, but still, I think that the quality is fine for the purpose of providing to you a background information of what we did, etc. So let me close the playlist. This is our calendar. Now, it may be that some changes occur during the course. It may happen that I get a commitment. It may happen that I get sick. So whatever changes we may need to make, I will let you know in advance. So if you don't hear anything from me, this is the official timetable that is also reported on the official website of the course. Maybe that on the official website, the timetable is more extended. You see, we only need 8 lectures. So if everything goes fine, by April 20, we will be done. About the exam, first of all, keep in mind that I cannot make any exam before June 6. June 6 is the official end of the lectures. I cannot make, again, any exam before that date. After June 6, I will schedule several exams, typically 2 in June and 2 in July, so you have plenty of opportunities. You are not many students. Usually, I am open to also to include additional exam dates on your request. It may happen that Professor Archetti makes the exam for me. This happened for coastal engineering. I would say that in this case, it's unlikely. Usually, what we do is, for those of you that have the course with both me and Professor Archetti, we do the exam at 2 different times, and then we make a weighted average of our marks. So to make an example, if you have the exam with me and Professor Archetti, and you get 30 with me, and 25 with, I'm just guessing, you know, and 25 with Professor Archetti, the weighted average would be, the weighted average would be 30 with me times 4 plus 25 with Professor Archetti times 2. This sum is divided by 6, and the resulting number is rounded to the nearest integer. So if the average is 27.2, we round to 27. If the average is 27.5, we round to 28. And of course, in rounding, we try to be flexible depending on our assessment. We are always in touch when we do these evaluations, so we don't just exchange the votes, we also exchange feelings on the student performances. So I am confident that this will work well. Sometimes we make the exam together the same day, we sit one close to the other, if the pandemic allows it, and we make the exam together. For this semester, you will have the opportunity to take the exam either in physical presence or online. It doesn't change anything because our exam is just an oral examination. So if it's in physical presence, it's typically an exam that lasts about 20-30 minutes with the 3 questions. The first question may be the presentation that you did during the lectures, or if not, because you didn't give any presentation, the first question usually, at least for me, is a question that I use to assess your ability to speak. And then the other questions are shorter. Your ability to speak, again, it is an essential element, it is an essential component of my evaluation. So sometimes it happens that a student knows everything, but the presentation is not perfect, and therefore, of course, I may, instead of 30, I may propose a 28, because this is typically the weight of a good presentation, about a couple of marks. And keep in mind that it happens sometimes that a student fails one question completely. And keep in mind that this is something that brings your mark down about 5 marks, just to give you an idea. Because it is extremely important that you get an overall overview of the whole program, but the exercises which are not part of the exam, as I said. So, when do I give 30? When the presentation is excellent, when everything is answered correctly, when the student provides a convincing proof that they got a good knowledge of the topic. When do I give the laude? First of all, only to a few students, about 5%, which means that you are 10, it means 0.5, rounded to 1. But it may be also more than 1. It depends, of course, on the student. I'm just providing a statistics where I say 5%. And the laude is corresponds to excellent presentation, excellent preparation, plus something more. And something more is, for instance, a clear indication that the student is really interested to the topic, a clear demonstration that the student has an excellent knowledge of the topic, is really able to handle it successfully, which means that the questions may become unusual and the student still is very good in providing the reply. Usually my questions are not unusual. Usually I only ask what I'm teaching, and also I will provide to you a list of questions at the end of the course, possible questions. So my questions usually are not unusual. But if I want to check if the student is exceptional, I may ask unusual questions. And of course, unusual questions require that you make some reasoning, you elaborate your knowledge, and the capability to elaborate on your knowledge, to me, is the real indicator that a laude is deserved. Because one thing is just reporting back. Another thing is to elaborate. And just try to get this idea, this concept. Having a good education, an excellent education, means that you can work with it. You can work with your education. It's not just your capability to report back. It means that you have learned something and you can manage it. And this is the indication that I give in order to make your education excellent, in order to make you very skilled, in order that when you make a job interview, the interviewer says, oh, this is really great. It means that what is the interviewer looking at? They are looking at your capability to manage, to work with your background. Just try to get this idea, to grasp this concept, because it's extremely important. If you realize what it means, you become successful. Okay, I would say that I am okay. And the exam dates will be fixed in agreement with you later on, I would say. I don't think it is useful, it is productive if we fix them now. I just would like to say that as soon as the lectures are finished, I'm available. And for a couple of dates in June and a couple of dates in July, as I said. Okay, and if you need any clarification, the best thing is to ask questions during the lectures, or at the next lecture, you may ask me questions related to the past lectures. This is the best way, because the questions are really an excellent aid to the teacher. And I really would like to reply to your question collectively. We may also organize, if you want, a question and answer session, like during a lecture, we stop 15 minutes and say, okay, please, give me your questions. And this would be very useful. If you prefer to meet with me individually, no problem. We can meet, if we are teaching in physical presence, we can meet after the lectures. If we are not teaching in physical presence, we can meet in Teams whenever you want. And no problem at all, but again, I would strongly prefer if you asked your questions during the lectures. The final thing I would like to tell you is that we have 4 hours. Actually, I would like to organize the lecture time in this way. I can start at 9:45 if I am in streaming. If I am in physical presence, please take a note. The starting time is 10:15. Because I am a commuter, I don't live in Ravenna. My train, my first useful train, gets in at the Ravenna train station at 10. So in physical presence, I would like to start at 10:15. In streaming, I would like to start at 9:45. I propose that I teach the first 2 hours, meaning net 1 hour and a half, continuously, from 9:45 to 11:15. Then I make a break of 15 minutes to 11:30. Then 15 minutes to 12:15. Another break of 15 minutes, 12:30, 1:15. I hope it is clear. 9:45, 11:15, break. Lectures again, 11:30, 12:15, break. Lectures, 12:30, 1:15. This is in streaming. In physical presence, different story, 10:15, 11:45. 15 minutes break up to noon, 1:30, and we close at 1:30. I hope it's clear. If it's not clear, write on the chat. If you prefer a different displacement of the timing, just write on the chat. I can do whatever you want. And in particular, if you think that the first 2 hours is too long and you want a break in between, no problem. We can do that. Okay, or you may say, I prefer instead of 15 minutes break, more breaks of 5 minutes. I don't like it because, you know, getting back after a break, it's always a problem, but you know, I'm available to organize the lectures as you prefer. Okay, so I think for the logistic I am done. Do you have any question so far before I move to the first lecture? Okay, let me see. New messages in the chat. No questions. Okay. Very good. Now, if you look at my screen, I go back to the list of the pages. And first of all, here there is one first page. I want to dedicate 5 minutes. Those of you who attended coastal engineering already saw it. I'm just opening it, and let me dedicate 5 minutes. And in particular, let's look at this table, which you can find in a Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia page is here. You see this link, 21st Century Skills. Click here, and this is the Wikipedia page. And you see here the figure that I included in my website. Let me go back to it. What is this table? It's presenting the so-called 21st century skills. It's a presentation of what some researchers working in social sciences think that are the essential skills that a professional worker in the 21st century should have. I think this table is, I think it is nice, it is interesting, because it gives to you an idea of what could be successful behaviors, of what could be the skills that may grant to you a successful career. So we have 3 columns. The four C's, learning and innovation, related to learning and innovation, critical thinking, problem solving. So an employer, what would like to get from you? Solutions. Solutions. When an employer looks for an engineer, he is looking for solutions. So if you are good in finding solutions, you will have a successful career. Creativity and innovation. Creativity and innovation are essential requirements for finding solutions. You have to be creative, and try to be creative with your background. You are learning, try to be creative. What does it mean to be creative? It means that you look around, you go in a port, you look around, you see problems, and you elaborate ideas for solving the problems. Communication, we already discussed about it. It is essential. If you don't communicate, nobody will know that you are good. You don't have to overemphasize your skills. You just have to be objective. Communicate with a low profile, and this will be an essential ingredient for success. Collaboration. Today, it's no more the time of people working alone. Today, we work in teams. And keep in mind that collaboration means that you can cooperate also with the people with whom you may compete. Competition doesn't preclude collaboration. Competition is a sane feeling, and provided you can also make competition fruitful for collaboration. Second column, digital literacy, information literacy, media literacy, ICT literacy. Information literacy, what does it mean in particular? It means that you have to be an excellent web surfer. The web is an enormous and extremely interesting tool, provided you are capable of using it. You can find everything on the web, provided you are able to search on the web. So try to get very familiar with the web, try to get an expertise in recognizing what is useful information and to recognize what is garbage. It is just a matter of experience, it's just a matter of testing how much an information is checked rather than not. Career and life, flexibility, initiative and self-direction, social and cross-cultural interaction, productivity and accountability. Accountability, keep in mind, you need to make your work accountable, which means give the means to others to check your performances. Leadership and responsibility. Leadership, another essential element. Leadership means that you are a leader. And, you know, being a leader, it's not something that you can obtain by being authoritative. They are not synonym. The very good leader doesn't need to be authoritative. The good leader just speaks and gets the esteem of the co-workers. This is what I just wanted to discuss to you. I think this is good food for thought. And just in order to shape your education, to give a direction to your education. Okay, and now let me go to the second link. The second link as well is something that those of you who attended the coastal engineering already know. So I kindly ask you to be patient for about 20 minutes, half an hour, in order to be able to recall to the other students what we are talking about. We are talking of harbors, of ports, but ports are located into the coast and therefore are an essential element of coast management. This is a premise about the value of coast, the value of the resources that are offered by the sea, by the maritime environment. First of all, let me say one essential information. Coastlines, the coasts, have a relevant socio-economical and ecological value. The socio-economical value is clear if you look at some essential statistics. Coastal areas occupy less than 15% of the Earth's land surface, but accommodate more than 40% of the population. About 1.2 billion of people live within 100 kilometers from a coastline and 100 meters of elevation. Again, about 40% of the global population lives close to coastlines, close to the seas. And this is something really interesting, really, I would say amazing. And it clarifies why the coasts are important. If you look at Italy, about 60% of the population lives in coastal areas. And keep in mind that Italy is essentially mountainous, which means that more than half of the population is concentrated in a very... I think there is a microphone open. Just 1 second, I can close it. Okay, so I mean, 60% of the population lives in a very, very restricted area. Now, the map that you see on the screen shows the landlocked countries, the so-called landlocked countries, which are countries, only a few, if you look at the total world map, which don't have any access to the sea. These countries are known to be very disadvantaged because they basically have cannot access to the very important resources offered by the sea in terms of commercial activities, in terms of fishing, in terms of tourism. So you see really the importance of the sea, and keep into account, I said very few countries are landlocked. Indeed, they are only 48. And we know that this is a problem. This is a problem from a socioeconomic point of view. So you see really the importance of what we are talking about. And now let's call about the ecosystems. You know that ecosystems are essential for sustainable development because ecosystems contribute to keep the nature, the whole nature system in equilibrium. Now, the coasts are extremely diverse in terms of ecosystems and have a very delicate equilibrium. It's very delicate because, you know, in the coasts, you have this marriage between salt water and fresh water. And you know what is the problem with salt water, which it's for vegetation, it's a risk. And so it means that close to the sea, you have this delicate equilibrium with some living species, both in terms of vegetation and micro-invertebrates and animal species that are living in an environment that is very delicate, because if you get a small sea level rise, then you have a compromission, you compromise the ecosystem. Can you imagine if a plant grew up? It means that the roots are getting fresh water, and the roots cannot go into the deep ground because there is salt water there. If you increase the sea level by just a few centimeters, it may mean that this vegetation disappears. So the equilibrium is very delicate, and at the same time, it's an equilibrium that is extremely important for the food chain. So it means that we have to pay real attention. There are some other environments which are more robust. The coast is a very delicate equilibrium. Now, the coastline is the line that forms the boundary between the land and the ocean, and it cannot be precisely determined, also because, you know, for the fact of the tides, the coastline is flexible, it's not fixed. And we try to get a map of the coastline by referring to average conditions. And keep in mind that the shape of the coastline is determined by fluvial deposition of sediment and erosion caused by waves. There are several different shapes of coastlines which range from beaches to the cliffed coast. The cliffed coast is typically very steep, while the flat coast may host beaches. Sometimes beaches are also present in cliffed coasts. They may form pockets in just beneath the cliffs. You may find pockets with flat coast and beaches. The beaches are extremely important for tourism and for many other reasons, and also for ecosystems. And they need to be protected because this equilibrium from equilibrium between fluvial deposition and wave erosion is very delicate again. And if we modify with human activities the wave regime, or modify with human activities the fluvial deposition, the result is that the shape of the coast changes in reaction to the modified equilibrium. And this is something that we have to carefully evaluate, because as you can understand, any change in the shape of the coast in a human impacted environment causes impacts on the socio-economic context. If we go down, we see a description of the social function and the value of seaports. And here there are some statistics that refer to the port of Genoa, for instance. And what is the meaning here? The meaning is that the ports have an extremely important role in modern society. It is, if you look at the numbers, and here you have examples for the port of Genoa, the numbers are impressive, are really impressive. And it means that the port is an essential element of the socio-economic context. This is why we are studying Harbour engineering, because we want to make sure that ports are well designed in order to carry out their functions in the best way. We want to make sure that the port is well managed and well maintained, because otherwise we compromise the functioning of these commercial activities, which again are very important. Now you see a picture of the port of Genoa, and the port of Genoa, by the way, is something that for the whole Italy is extremely important. Is one of the major ports of Italy, together with Rome, Civitavecchia, with Naples, together with other ports in Sicily and in the south of Italy. And also the port of Ravenna. The port of Ravenna is extremely important from a commercial point of view. Precisely the existence in Ravenna of the port is the reason why we opened a degree program in offshore engineering in Ravenna, and we are now opening a new degree program in Harbour engineering in Ravenna, because of the pressure that the university got from the stakeholders, from the local administrations, from the industries, to form engineers who are highly specialized in this evolving discipline, which is port design, port management, port maintenance. Okay, and here there are a couple of paragraphs on the social function and value of beaches. I think we can skip it because it's more pertinent to coastal engineering. And there is also a paragraph on the ecology of beaches. Here you can see a picture that I think it is extremely significant. Do you see the tiny equilibrium between the vegetation and the sand? You see that there is grass here. If there is grass, it means that there is fresh water. And where does the fresh water comes from? It comes from rainfall. Rainfall falling over this elevated area. This elevated area is called the dune, and it's formed by sand, but the fact that it's elevated means that it has capability to store fresh water, and the fresh water is used by this vegetation. And the vegetation stops precisely where the elevation goes down, and the elevation going down means that the salt water is able to reach that part, which means salt water means also spray, salted spray, which means that the vegetation cannot survive. If you go further inland, you see in the horizon of the picture, you see trees. These trees are located at a greater distance from the sea. Why is that? Because trees need deeper roots. And so they cannot locate into the dune, because if they go with the roots into the dune, they get the salt water and they die. So they need to move inland in such a way that they can push the root in the deep soil without finding any salt water. The presence of these trees down there means that at the depth of their root, there is no salt water. Maybe that if you go deeper, you can find some salt water, but if they are there, at the depth of the roots, there is no salt water. This is something that you can perceive by observing. So for instance, you may go there, look at the three species get information on the web on the depth, typical depth of the roots. Today you have apps in the phone that recognize trees. If you take a picture of the leaves, you can recognize trees. And then you can get information on the depth of the roots. And then you have an idea of the depth of fresh water. So if you observe today, with the information that is available, open access on the web, you can get a lot of technical info that are useful to an engineer. Again, this equilibrium is very delicate. And if you have a sea level rise of 5 centimeters, it's something that may be not dangerous for flooding, not dangerous for, in terms of raising water, but it may be dangerous for the ecosystem because 5 centimeters more may imply that those trees down there die. If the tree die, then the land gets more exposed to wind, to the sand brought by the wind. So these are all reflections that you can elaborate based on your creativity, based on your education. And I highly suggest you to look around, to go to coasts, beaches, and trying to understand what's going on. If you don't have time to look around, to go and look around, you may browse the web. There are a lot of figures, a lot of pictures from all over the world, and you can get the additional information that you need. Exploring makes you creative. Okay, and here there is a picture about saltwater intrusion. We skip it. It's not part of this course, but you see from this figure what I also mentioned before. The more you get inland, the more the depth of salt water. This is why I said the trees tend to move inland, precisely for this reason. Okay, and I think we can stop here for this lecture. Let me make a summary of what we discussed. This was a descriptive lecture. A descriptive lecture means that the information that you get is not technical. It's still an essential part of your education. We don't have to assume that the education of an engineer is only technical. It's only math. Absolutely not. Of course, there is some math, which we will call into play, but also there are some descriptive information. You may think that the descriptive information is boring. I wouldn't make this mistake because without the basic knowledge of what we are talking about, you cannot build any technical education. Of course, during an exam and also during your professional life, you may face questions, problems that require a descriptive answer or require a descriptive solution. Like, for instance, stop getting water from that well in the land if you want to not deprivate the soil of fresh water. You may find questions, solutions that require a technical treatment. And so try to get prepared at the exam to also answer descriptive questions. So I may ask you, what does it mean landlocked countries? And your reply shouldn't just be, it means countries that don't have any access to the sea. You should say this, but you should also elaborate on that. If it is the first question of your exam, you know that I am asking it to check your capability to speak, to present. So you may elaborate and say what we discussed. A landlocked country is a disadvantaged country. There are only a few countries in the world that are landlocked. They are 48, if you remember. And they are disadvantaged because they don't have access to the resources offered by the sea, in particular fisheries, in particular trading, in particular tourism, etc. So don't underestimate, because one mistake, don't underestimate the value of descriptive lectures, because one mistake that I see often in the students of engineering, they try to focus only on the maths, because they are convinced that once they know the maths, they know everything. I think it is a mistake, especially in Harbour engineering, because you will see that in Harbour engineering, it's a subject that is much descriptive. And when we call the maths into play, very often it's empirical relationships. It's only rarely we will make some mathematical development, some proofs. This means that, you know, empirical relationship is something that you cannot learn by memory. It's something that you just have to know that it exists, they exist, but it's not something that I suggest you to learn by memory. Okay, so I think we still have 10 minutes before the break. Let me move to the next one, which is a new lecture for everybody, port planning and environmental impact. This is in between. It's a mix between descriptive lecture and more technical one. Okay, give me only 1 second. I breathe a little bit and I wanna check how many students do we have now. It's okay, 11. Okay. So, port planning. Good. What is port planning? I think the word speaks for the meaning, and it's port planning and port design implies that we make a plan for either the construction of a new port, make a plan and make a design, either the construction of a new port, for the management of an existing port, or the maintenance and maybe the expansion of an existing port. And it is a typical procedure of engineering design. It is interdisciplinary because we will see that it's a multifaceted problem. It's not just dealing with maritime engineering. There is also civil engineering that is called into play. There is mechanical engineering because ports typically are equipped with cranes, and then we need to know how cranes work. What are cranes? I think you know what are cranes, but let me just open a page and look for crane, and let me put also port and look at the images. So you'll see what is a crane in a port, and you see that the crane is originating loads on the berth and the port. Just to make clear the terminology, what is a berth? And let's see the images. I think the most useful one is this one. This is a berth. And you see, by chance, I got to a web page which described some terminology. So what is a port, what is a terminal, which is a subdivision of a port, and what is a berth? It's a location in a port or harbor used for mooring vessels. And I lost the picture here. So let me go back to the picture, and you see here this rectangle which I am pointing out with the mouse. This is the berth. Okay, and I want to be clear with the terminology. Every time that the terminology is not clear to you, it may be because it's not clear to me as well sometimes, and I suggest that you ask questions, or independently you may do what I did. So just type on the web, search for images, and you get a clarification of what we mean. So as I said, it's an interdisciplinary effort which requires, see the list of the bullet points here, planning and consultation with stakeholders, preliminary load estimation and preliminary design of structures, environmental impact assessment. This is a key operation for which sometimes we struggle to find technical guidelines, approval of the preliminary design, and then the final detailed design. These are the main steps. I am referring with these lectures to a book. I go down at the bottom of the lecture to the list of references. That's too much down, just 1 second. Here, this book is my reference. You don't need to buy it. It's quite costly, and you don't need to buy it. I just would like you to know that I distilled from the book essential information. The book is much more detailed with respect to my lectures. I distilled from this book essential information to build these web pages. And also, I think this is instead public domain. It's also useful, this standard from Spain, which is a technical guideline for port design in Spain, which I think it is useful because we are working in an international environment. Let me see if the link is still active. Yes, you see that it's a PDF. And this is something that it was also very useful to me to elaborate these web pages. Now I go up again and to our lecture. Now, keep in mind that very often when designing a port, you have to face lack of space, because of course the cost very often is not much extended. You cannot use a long portion of the cost, also for logistic reasons. So what is the result? The result is that this very tiny area gets overexploited, overused, and then logistics become extremely important. You have to organize the working procedures in the port in a very efficient way. And this is why port logistics is emerging today as a fundamental discipline for the management of ports. And logistics implies that we know how to store the goods into a container, for instance, in order to maximize the use of space. Logistic means that we organize the traffic, the movement of the containers into the port to maximize operational efficiency. We are not dealing with logistic, and it's something that goes beyond the focus that we have in this course, but you have to be fully aware that if your profession will be port management and you will be an harbor engineer, then I suggest that you learn something about logistics. It's not very difficult. It's just a matter of there is some maths, there are algorithms for solving the problems, which of course require a proper education. We will not discuss logistics, as I said, and also we will not discuss port planning in detail, as we will focus on only on some parts, only on some topics related to port structure design. And so in particular, we will focus on the estimation of loads for the berths and the loads originated by the sea waves, originated by the interaction between the port and the sea. For instance, we will not take into account the loads that derive from the interaction of the port with the land, because these are in the domain of geotechnics. So we will have a relatively restricted focus during these 32 hours, but I will try to give a global overview of the problems. In my web pages, you will see often links like this one, which I am indicating, pointing with the mouse. Let's open it. Just to, this is something that was missed. Okay, so I have to check because sometimes I'm linking from the web pages of other professors and I need to check the links. In this case, it's probably better to remove it. And what I was saying, the links give to you the opportunity to expand your preparation, to expand your knowledge. It's not required that you follow the links in order to prepare your exams. Your exam. I suggest that you follow the link if you feel interested by the link itself. And in this case, for instance, I think this was an interesting link because it was an interesting collection of case studies, which means some problems of port design that were offered by this colleague. And in this case, if you felt interested in the case studies, you might have decided to follow the link. I will try to fix it or to remove it if the material is no more available. Okay, before I pass to the more technical part, I suggest that we make our 15 minutes break. I wonder whether you have any question before the break.